So we're going to talk about seven of the major arcana in the tarot that have a special status. And as you may or may not know, in the major arcana of the tarot, there are 22 cards. And these cards are divided into a group of three, a group of 12, and a group of seven. And the three correspond to the alchemical properties of sulfur, mercury, and salt, or the elements of fire, water, and air. And the 12 are the zodiac signs, and then the seven are the classical planets. So that's Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. And this video is going to talk about how these majors form a special set that assists the adept in forming a coherent consciousness. And so we're going to look at the world, the Wheel of Fortune, the Tower, the Sun, the Empress, the Magician, and the High Priestess. And that is Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, in that order. And what this pertains to is a structure known as the Magen Star, or the Star of David. The Star of David, as an emblem for the Jewish religion, is a fairly recent phenomenon. And the motif of two interlaced triangles goes back all the way to antiquity and is known as the Magen Star. And so here we can see the Magen Star set up to show the alchemical elements. And these signs are the signs of the elements. The one that looks like an H is Saturn. The one that looks like a 4, is Jupiter. The one that looks like the male symbol is Mars. Then in the center is a circle with a dot in it. That's the Sun. And then the female symbol, as they're typically used, is Venus. And then the female symbol with the crescent on top is Mercury. And then finally, the lunar crescent itself is the Moon. And these represent story streams, we want to call them. These can be archetypes, these can be gods, these can be aspects of our conscious and unconscious forces in the world interwoven in a sevenfold braid. And we see on the left here this particular diagram. It's the same idea, except that what we've done is we've added edges, and we've added a set of three axes through the center. And so this picks out several other structures, including an upright pentagram, a downward pentagram, and this unicursal hexagram that appears in this. So this just gives you an idea. And actually, if you can use your imagination, this can pop out and become a octahedron, which is an 8-sided polyhedron. And this is a glyph of synthesis for the 7 classical planets, or the 7 classical archetypes. So, the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, as you may or may not know, is a crucial element of the I'm not recording, am I? Oh, of course I'm recording. Okay. I was worried there for a moment. Right. So the Tree of Life is a crucial element of the modern Kabbalistic tarot. The tarot was married to the Tree of Life about maybe 200 years ago. Perhaps these traditions go deeper. There's a whole discussion of this. The tarot is a complex issue and a complex subject, so many people have different opinions, and many scholars have traced elements of it. Elements of the stories in the tarot going to Egypt or going to possibly China. So what do we really know is that the first tarot decks that we know of come from Italy, and they were used largely in gaming. But you have to keep in mind that this isn't just casual, meaningless gaming. There's a learning component to it, which is why the major arcana, which are these ancient stories, feature so prominently on the cards, because they didn't actually have any particular advantage or disadvantage or function in the trick taking game. Whether you had the fool or the tower didn't matter. So why have these stories? And the answer is um, to edify and educate through the course of play. And so the structure of the tarot has been adapted and evolved and gotten more and more complex over the centuries. And what we're working with now is a tarot that has been synthesized, married to the Kabbalah, the system or many systems of Jewish mysticism, which are also connected to Hellenic and Neoplatonic philosophy, through concepts of emanation, right? The universe is emanated from the Godhead, and so forth. And we're not going to go into too much detail on this. I could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all of this. All I want to say here is that we have a diagram that is a diagram that shows us our place, or our consciousness's place in the scheme of creation. So how the universe, how reality manifests. And you can see that 7 of these spheres have been picked out in color. And these are the spheres of the planets. And so what we can do when we look at the trump cards that are assigned to the planets is we can develop stories, complex, rich, involving stories that connect us to those archetypes. So an adept tarot reader is a fountain of stories. And these stories serve a function to metabolize and digest confusion um, and doubt and problems. So it's a strategy where, by having these archetypes at our disposal, we can navigate the otherwise seemingly meaningless terrain of life, with these scenarios that we know how to deal with in various different ways. And of course, we learn how to deal with them by thinking about them. It's like the famous fairy tales, and I'm thinking, like the three wishes. That's not just you ask, to tell the story of the lamp and the three wishes. What questions would you ask a genie? You can spend a whole lifetime refining your answer to that question, and it will pertain to how you ultimately um, pursue your desires, your intentions. This kind of fairy tale scenario is often a placeholder for real strategies that affect our actual decisions in life. So fairy tales may be imaginary, but they have actual effects, which is the whole philosophy of the tarot in a nutshell. In this image of the tree of life, we have 7 spheres picked out, and these are at the center of it. These are where the human being has agency. So the one below, known as Malkuth, is essentially the external world, and the ones above are the supernal world. And so this place here, which has been colored with the color wheel, is effectively a bridge or a nexus. And this can sometimes be known as the Ruach, the 6 central spheres. So technically, this one here, known as Da'ath or knowledge, is outside of the set. It sort of pertains to mortality. And so mortality isn't part of consciousness per se. It's something that picks up the boundaries of consciousness, right? That sort of final horizon. But in any event, there are 7 spheres, 6 spheres in the Ruach, plus this connection to mortality, and they are usually pictured in the center of the tree. And remember, this isn't actually a sphere of the tree of life. This is a quasi-sphere. So technically, this should be way up above in the supernals, but it is placed in the center for the purposes of us learning to integrate it into our psyche. So basically, this Magen Star that you can see fitted in the middle of the tree is an integrated psyche operating at this sort of bridge level between the heavenly and the material. And you can see also these color wheel here. And this color wheel is just there to show you the opposites, right? So blue and purple, or sorry, yellow and purple, blue and orange, and red and green. And you can see the Ruach, not Dath here, but the Ruach contains these color opposites. So this is going to be Mars and Venus. This is going to be Jupiter and Mercury. This is going to be the Sun and the Moon, and then this is Saturn. So the Golden Dawn color attributions were set up to reflect modern color theory, the color wheel, and all that kind of stuff. So you can see red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors, and orange, green, and purple are the secondary colors. And so there's all sorts of we'll say depth to why these colors were picked, and you'll see them in many versions of the tarot. So we're going to look at a bunch of versions of the 7 cards in the later part of this video. So let's move ahead. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So here we are dealing with the world. And what is the world? The world is the planet Saturn. It represents the manifest, the extant, the synthesis of the whole, melancholy or melancholia, the attribute of, we call it depression or leadenness, because there's metals assigned to these, alchemical metals, and lead is the metal assigned to this. We call it the prima materia, the alchemical first material. Mortality, of course, time, chronos, and knowledge, because of course it's fitted in this position Dath, which means knowledge. So this card is giving us a picture by which we may orient ourselves to this position. And it's a picture of a naked person, a naked woman dancing with 2 rods in a wreath with the 4 cherubic beings representing the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, right? Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. And it's through a kind of artistic affinity and I want to say an osmosis that we develop a way of seeing ourselves in this position, and this will help us relate kind of aesthetically to what this stream of Saturn energy is about. And it's about taking on the mantle of worldliness and being put to the test of the great dance of life and death. And so its value is 21, which is 7 and 7 and 7. So it is a multiplication in a way of the sevenfold nature, and it is an amplification. So and is the only one of these that isn't technically the Ruach. It's not technically consciousness. Death is not consciousness. It's the limit of consciousness. And the world is not consciousness. It's the limit of an individual consciousness. Right. So next is the Wheel of Fortune. And I'm doing this in the order Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, because this is how they manifest on the tree of life, right? Saturn is a Dath, then Jupiter is 4, Mars is 5, Sun is 6, Venus is 7, Mercury is 8, and the Moon is 9. And this order, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, is actually the order. It's called the Platonic order, and it's very, very old and very, very classic. And it is the order of speed that we see these planets moving in the sky. So from the point of view of a Earth-based Ptolemaic or geocentric astrology, Saturn is the slowest, followed by Jupiter, followed by the Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, which is the fastest moving in the sky in terms of going through its cycles. So that's why we have that order. So we go from Saturn to Jupiter, and Jupiter is the wheel of fortune, and it is connected to the idea of energy, expansion, luck, peace, rule, change because it's a wheel, and mercy because mercy is the sphere associated with it on the tree of life, and then tin. One thing I haven't said yet is these are also associated to Hebrew letters. I didn't want to make the Hebrew letters the core of this talk, but I should say what they are. Saturn, or the world, is Tau, the cross, and the wheel of fortune is Kaf, the palm. So that's the assignment. Not every system has that assignment, but that's quite common, and it's related to the Golden Dawn system. The Golden Dawn being probably the dominant Kabbalistic tarot system in the 20th century magic. So here we have Jupiter. So this gives us an idea of the expansive force, and there's all sorts of stories and lessons to be had. One of the key ones is attain the axle, and you can even see here's the cherubic beings as well. But this focuses on this idea of rising and falling. We see the name of God, Yod He Vav He, here, and the word Taro, and here are the alchemical elements. And of course, the circle with the cross in it represents the earth. And of course, the eightfold wheel represents the 8 directions, known in Chinese as the Bagua. And then the Sphinx and the serpent and the kind of Anubis-like figure are showing the forces which are driving this wheel. So the idea is attaining the center of the wheel is the key to peaceful power, and that is what Jupiter is about. And next we have the tower, and the tower is to the wheel, or Mars is to Jupiter as contraction is to expansion. So the excess of merciful expansion of the tower of the wheel energy is counteracted by the contractive energy or the catastrophic energy of Mars. And so we see this tower coming apart, and we think, oh no, but actually it's usually a good thing, renovative force to make sure that our walls don't get too hard and I guess reified. So the force of Mars is always there to bring down excessively rigid labels. So Mars generally gives us force and focus, concept of contraction, discipline, war, martial arts, energy, disaster, conflict, severity, and its metal is iron. So it's this, you can see this narrative. You can ask yourself questions like, why did the lightning hit the tower? What are you, if you were these people, what would you do? What is released from the tower? There's all sorts of things. Also, these are like these little falling drops are in the shape of the Hebrew letter Yod, so you can construe that in some way. The lightning flash, of course, evokes the pattern of numbers that produce the tree of life, known as the lightning flash. And in general, so you can look at this tower as a cue card, right, for entering into the stories that we will assemble in the Mars position on the Magen Star on the tree of life. Okay. The sun is right at the heart of it. The sun is in the center, and it's gold, it's harmony, equilibrium, beauty, self-consciousness, and centrality, the ego in a sense. So the seat of the adept, who has a self in the world. And of course, the sun rises and the sun sets. And so it is subject to mortality. And there's stories to be told here. There's a walled garden, and that's the idea of the differentiation between the self and the other. And there's also the child wearing the feather. The feather is also appears in other cards. It appears in the Fool. It appears in Death. So it becomes a reference across the cards to other layers of interpretation. And the idea of a naked child riding a stallion is the idea of innocence and joy, undertaking an engagement with the world in a very blissful way. Who knows how it's gonna turn out? Maybe he'll fall. Maybe any number of things could happen. But the main thing is that there's this incredible output of joy, and that's really present at the center of the Magen Star. At the center of the Ruach is this blazing personality. Okay. The Empress is nature. The Empress is nature, not just Gaia, but the entire manifest universe. So you can see the garden of of the natural, but it's all the way up to the crown of stars. So it's really suggesting that the material body of the universe is all, and she's relaxing in this garden. This tree here is very interesting because it looks a lot like the pineal gland, right? It looks like a pine cone type thing. So the third eye is implicated, and of course the cushion. She's the only one that actually has her sign like straight up written on the card, and that's the Venus, the symbol for Venus. The Empress is love, is unification, is the force of inclusion, but she's also power, right? So she's the power that comes through radical inclusion. And you can see there's wheat here, which is a symbol of course, of wealth and fertility. So so there's a lot in here to give us kind of aesthetic emotion, right? To enable us to imbue this position on the star with aesthetic emotion, otherwise known as rasa, right? Rasa theory comes from Kashmir Shaivism, from Tantra, and it's the idea that a well constructed artwork is a vessel for these aesthetic emotions that can enable us to have transcendent experience. So we taste them as we enter into a relationship with the art. So so she's got, and look at, there's all these pomegranates on her dress, which can give us many different roots, but fertility is one of them. And also perhaps a link to the underworld. There's a myth of Persephone, who has a double nature. And Persephone is, of course, the underworld goddess. So this wouldn't be Persephone itself, but there is this suggestion that there is a dual face to this goddess. But this is the life-giving, love radiating force of nature. Right. And so Venus, nature, art, eros, love, inclusion, and the metal is copper. And copper, of course, corrodes in, becomes green. And bronze, of course, is an alloy, but here's a beautiful piece by Leah Poller, and it's got a really nice green patina, which links it to the Empress. And in a certain way, the Empress rules over all of these because on the Tree of Life, her number is 7. There's many numbers be involved. I don't want to confuse you guys. This is, for another video, but the number 7 is also associated with the Empress and the Ankh and so forth. So there is a way that this includes everything and is a master key. to the whole. And yeah, so there's this beautiful sculpture called Alphabet by Leah Pollard, for whom this video is actually dedicated, because I've put together this video because I wanted to convey some things about these 7 cards to Leah, but I thought it would be good to to give this to everyone who's interested. Okay, so ooh, the magician. I like the magician. Hey, little buddy, you want to come and make an appearance? All right. We have a visitor who wants to come and say hello. This is my little buddy. See, look, we're doing a video. Yeah, we're talking about the magician. So the magician is Mercury. The planet Mercury is the quality of communication, the power of communication. Talking about skill, control, adepthood, trickery to some degree, and deftness. And of course, the magician is a possessor of words of power that can evoke elements of the universe. The magician is sort of at this nexus. The magician's consciousness is composed of the Ruach, of the Magen Star. So, as a magus, they are capable of regulating and sort of harmonizing this. If there's a little bit too much in one sphere, they can downplay it. If there's something lacking in another, they can figure out how to bring it in. And so they're becoming more and more and more in harmony and equilibrium in order to do their work, which is ultimately to link the 4 worlds. The 4 worlds are um, um, emanation, creation, formation, and action, fire, water, air, and earth. And these are the letters of the name of God as well. And so you can see the 4 suits of the tarot, the wands, the cups, the swords, and the pentacles, are all there laid out on the table in service to infinity. And he's bridging the above and the below here. So that this is really the message that Mercury, or the magician, is the being who can operate the tarot in order to manifest or demanifest phenomenon, right? Appearance and disappearance. This is what magicians do. Yeah, and methodologies, right? There's something ultimately clever about the magician. And I would go so far as to say that that's the magician's downfall, right? Is the cleverness, because at the end of the day, cleverness is always displacing something. So Mercury's always getting in a little bit of trouble, but nevertheless, this is the figure of action and control. And Quicksilver is this metal that's associated to the magician, right? It's the only liquid metal at room temperature. Okay, and then finally we have the High Priestess, and the High Priestess is the lowest point of this Magen Star, and she represents the foundation, right, of everything, the fountainhead. You can see this beautiful, like, bubbling spring coming up, and I feel like that's their kind of nourishing and refreshing the whole. She's the moon, mystery, intuition, the unconscious, dreaming. She's the metal silver, and she's the mysteries themselves. And the big thing about so behind her is actually the pomegranates in the shape of the tree of life, but her body obscures them. She's holding the Torah, which is an anagram for tarot. So the Torah, the law, and the tarot are being compared or equated. And Boaz and Jachin, B and J, represent the 2 pillars of King Solomon's temple. And this is very important in Freemasonry. And we have the sickle here, and the pomegranates again suggest a relationship to the Empress. So the 2 sides of the Empress, or the 2 sides of gnosis, if you will, the manifest and the unmanifest gnosis. And what's behind this this veil? Well, we can see is this oceanic horizon, right? We can see it, but yet there's a screen raised above it. So, and this is the crown of Isis. So this is a lot of story that we can now imbue the moon with. So we've imbued all 7 of the planets with these powerful stories. And now we can see them come together as a Magen Star. So here I've laid them out as you would see them, right? The world, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. These are going to be the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the tree of life. Technically, this isn't 3, it's actually this non-numerical interval. So this is kind of 1, 2, 3, if you want. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so this is the operating center, the control panel of the planetary adept. And what's interesting, so here we can see that here's the classical alchemical symbols, and this is the unicursal hexagram. This is to give you an idea of how it would look like an octahedron. So here's the central axis, and this is a cross, and through it. So these are these paths are internal axes, and then there is a square base, and then lines leading up to a zenith and lines sloping down towards a nadir. So if you take, interesting thing, if you take the 7 points that are the planets, and the 3 internal axes, which are the elements, and the 12 external axes, which are the zodiac, you have a total of 22 components. So this is actually a summary of all 22 of the major arcana, which is why, if asked, if I were to take some of the cards and do an art piece with them, which ones? And I say 7, because those 7 pieces will give us the framework to invoke or host the entire system on it like a chassis or armature. And you can see that this octahedral figure is sitting in the middle of the tree. And I just wanted to point out that this also then becomes connected to how we experience time. We experience time through a continuous cycle of 7 days that are related to the planets. And remember, the order is Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon. That's the order that we get the Platonic order, right? That I was discussing before, from slowest to fastest of the planets. But that's around the circle. But if you look at this heptagon, or heptagram rather, and you read the lines themselves, you read the star, you see. Let's start with Venus. Venus. Oh, hey, buddy. Have some challenges. So Venus here is going to be Friday. Vendredi is Friday. So Frigga's day is a Norse reference, but it's the goddess. So it's Friday, Saturn day, Sunday, Moon day, Woden's day or Mardi, Mars day, Mercredi, Wednesday, Woden's day. What did I say? Tuesday. Excuse me. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Tyr's day, right? Tyr, the god of war, or Mardi, Mars day, and then Mercredi, which is Mercury day, or Wednesday, Woden's day, Thursday, Thor's day, or Jeudi, Jupiter day, and Vendredi. So what I'm trying to show is that the 7-day week is connected by this cipher to the Ruach, to consciousness. So as we experience time, we are also reifying our consciousness through these archetypes. So this is a very, very, very deep enfolding of the human into how we experience time and reality, and it's like a deep code or seal. So that's the heptagon or heptagram. So here's the same. I'm just going to show you a bunch of tarot decks now. So this is Visconti Sforza. So you can see the world, the Wheel of Fortune. Hey, little buddy, you want to go on an adventure? Or you want to see more about tarot? All right. So we got the world up here, and I love how this Visconti Sforza deck has the world is two angels, two cherubs holding up a hexagonal palace, and it reminds me of the Abbey of Thelem in Rabelais' work Gargantua. Um, and then we have the Wheel of Fortune, which may be an eightfold wheel or maybe a sixfold wheel. This is a phenomenal deck. I highly recommend studying it. The tower here is actually not an original artwork. It's an interpretation because the original was lost. But but the tower, you can see the star and the sun being released. Here's the sun in the middle, the Empress, the magician at his table, working with all the tools, and finally the Papess beneath the surface here. So so that's the more or less oldest sort of layer of tarot that we have. Next, we can look at the Marseille deck, where they start to get numbers, and of course, the world here is familiar to us. It's that wreath and the four animals. Um, and the Wheel of Fortune here is being again driven by a force of three. This one's driven by a force of four. So this technically says, I reign, I have reigned, I will reign. Sorry, I'm reigned over, I will reign. So it shows the striving. And I think it's quite a lot like the Buddhist Wheel of Life. So maybe those ideas came along the Silk Road. I don't know. And then Fortune herself is in the center with her heart at the center of the wheel. Um, and in this one, we have a sort of cranked wheel that gets cranked, and this triple force is driving it. Here's the tower again. Struck by fire or lightning, the crown comes off. This is a cipher for male orgasm as well. But then the people are falling out. So catastrophe. And the sun in the center with this twin energies, similar to the twins in the world. Tarot is evolving, right? It's getting its legs. It's starting to learn, new ways of expressing these ideas. And sometimes symbols from one card will drift over time into the context of another card. And some symbols from old cards vanish, and it's all sorts of interesting things. Here's the Empress. And Le Battleur means the juggler. So magicians, prestidigitators were known as jugglers back in the day. And so you can see all the tools of illusion going on there. And then, of course, Le Papes again. Okay. So I'm not going to go into super close detail on the rest of these because I got a bunch of decks to show you. But this one is marketed as the ancient Italian deck from Lo Scarabeo, I believe. Yeah, the world, same theme. You can see this, like you can see the similar. This is a really beautiful deck. I really like it actually. But many of the same uh, types of symbols appearing here. Not that much different. I love this scallywag of a magician, and he's got an apron, and he's up to who knows what, but he's got this smirk, which I find intriguing. And yeah, so the sun, of course, in that feeling, that just sort of high noon, eternal noon sensation coming out of the sun. This one here shows us the world. This is the Hermetic Tarot by Godfrey Dawson, I believe. It's a great tarot. He's obviously developed his artistic skills and everything in service to producing this highly arcane esoteric tarot, and it's I really like this one. It's the work of there's a lot of labor in this deck, and I don't understand all of it because it's sort of idiosyncratic in its own way. But yeah, check out the Wheel of Fortune, and the world is this swirl of actions and symbols, and yeah, the tower. And the Magus is very intriguing, very sort of sword and sorcery kind of forked beard kind of thing. But I really like this deck quite a lot. It uses a different system than I do, but I enjoy looking at uh, this highly arcane and interesting deck. Um, Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck is a really important 20th century deck, like one of the most important. Uh, I don't want to rank things, that seems silly to me, but the Rider Waite Smith, which is what I've started with, is the most popular 20th century deck. It's a bit of an outlier, actually. It was at the time, but it's sort of changed the story because Pamela Coleman Smith uh, basically did her own drawings for the minor arcana, and that hadn't really been done before. Maybe in one example of a deck that's very obscure called the Solabusca, but of the 20th century decks, looming very, very, very tall is Aleister Crowley's. The art is fantastic. The mysteries are deep. The major arcana are great. There's tons of stuff, and there's the Shemha Mepharash, the 72-fold name of God. It lays out in this grid. You can even actually see the if you had a copy of them, look carefully in the world, the constellations are represented in this is just wild. The Wheel of Fortune's beautiful, and it's got two planes in operation. Here's the magic circle, and here's the wheel, and you can imagine if that wheel was swept around a sort of an orthogonal axis, it would if you swept it back and up, it would cross through this other orthogonal plane. And there's something in the wheel that's like a portal to another plane of existence. So that's being suggested here. The tower, and the symbol of the mouth, which is the Hebrew letter Pei, meaning mouth, and it's devouring this. Yeah, so this is Tau, Chaf, Pei, meaning mouth, Resh, meaning face or head, Daleth, meaning door for the Empress, Bet, meaning house for the Magus, and Gimel, meaning camel for the priestess. And you can see he's even written them down. Or I don't know, this is in the framing, so when you buy this deck, it shows you that. So that's useful. And the sun has a zodiac in it. There's lots going on in the tower, right? This mouth is devouring it from below, and the lightning from above. So it's sort of like the idea of structure is threatened from two directions at once, from by hunger and by provenance, if you will. So there's something revolutionary about it, right? Structures are not as stable as they appear to be. And then you have the demiurge here, this golden lion serpent, and the dove, the Holy Ghost. So there's tons of stuff in here. The Empress, very classic image. She's got a pelican feeding her young from the blood of her own breast. Here's the Magus juggling, and accompanied by the Ape of Thoth, which is the distortion effect of the Magus's words by necessity are misinterpreted. So the conveyance of truth has to pass through this layer of distortion, which is symbolized by the ape. And then finally, the High Priestess, who is Isis Astarte, Artemis. She's got the bow, and there's two worlds. There's this infinite sort of veils and veils and veils, and then there's this world of straight lines, and then ultimately this fruiting zone here. So I could get caught up in the details for hours and hours and hours. So we'll move through this fairly generally. Here's Leonora Carrington's tarot, again, the world, and look at this unicursal hexagon and the Wheel of Fortune. Here's the tower, the sun, the Empress, this lovely magician with the lemnis gate over their head, and then the High Priestess. Um, and the color scheme here is not quite related to what we saw before, but you can see this. There's been some interesting color choices here because often we see cool colors in the High Priestess, but here is the blood. So there's a kind of an indication of where this particular gnosis is going, right into the blood of our being. And the moon is related to blood and the menstrual cycle and so forth. So we can see that. So that's the aesthetic choice that's been made here. Okay, this one is one of my all-time favorites, and this is Ethel Colquhoun. Somebody should uh, correct me on the pronunciation. I'm a reader, but I see these names often just in text. So anyway, Ethel Colquhoun, I believe is how we pronounce her name. She was in English adept. Her work was overlooked. She was considered a footnote to surrealism, but now she's getting her moment. I mean, she's deceased, but um, people are starting to appreciate the incredible work that she did. Um, she was living in Cornwall in St. Ives, I believe, and anyway, she produced this amazing deck in 1977, 76, very close to when I was born. uh, I'm I'm from 1976, and at any rate, yeah, 77 was done, and then of course it was shown in a gallery and forgotten about until the last 10 years. And Folger Press has done a great job of bringing this back into our awareness. So this is a tarot deck with no symbols. It is entirely done with color combinations that are drawn from these really, really refined tables of correspondence. So the tarot, the colors are energies. This looks like a free-form experiment in blobs of color, and yet it is not. They are very specifically chosen, and they are combined to produce this effect that the energy speaks for itself. This is actually my favorite tarot. The energy speaks for itself. There, you don't have the this is in a way this is tarot operating in the world of emanation, whereas most operate in the world of creation, imaginal forms. This one is taking us right to the radiance of the colors themselves, drawing on a modified Golden Dawn color system. And yeah, so here we have Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, right? So the world, the wheel, the tower, the sun, the high priestess, or the empress, the magician, and the high priestess. These are beautiful cards by Folger. And then here is a deck called Glyph, the Tarot of Type um, by Guy Sexty, who has worked with me. And so this was actually produced during one of my courses. It is a great deck, and you can see the reason I put it here next to Eithel's is that the influence is very, very clear. And so we've got the world. You can see the indigo, and the wheel of fortune, but you can see the color resemblance, right? So this has been produced using minimal elements, so just typefaces and so we've got brackets and stars, but these are all elements of typography because this is a deck that is a study in typography. So it's a great deck, and it's a very, very limited edition. There's only, I think, 25 of these in existence, but hopefully it'll get a second edition, and people can get their hands on it because it's a really great esoteric deck, very clear and crisp, in terms of it's very disciplined in terms of its structure. So yeah, there it is. The Glyph, the Tarot of Type. This is a deck that I made. There's only two of them in existence. I'm not even sure I have a name for it. Well, the Book of Particles is what I called it. But I did this in 2005 while traveling in Europe, and I made these glyphs. So the world for me is footprints, because this is a reference to the Buddhist idea of the footprints, the symbols of walking in the world. And then the Wheel of Fortune, the tower, the sun. You can see the twins under the sun, and then um, the high priestess, or sorry, the empress, and then the magician in his house, and then the priestess as Archer or Artemis. And this is next, in contrast to Benabel Wen's, one of the more recent editions of Benabel Wen's work. So she's a very, very prolific tarot adept, and she's from, I believe she's of Taiwanese descent. So this is interesting. She's extremely syncretic and eclectic. So you see elements from all over the world. The I Ching has been married to the tarot, and there's runes, and there's Mayan numbers, and there's all sorts of stuff. Gods and goddesses from every pantheon you can imagine. So it's a very interesting. It's a busy deck, but it's got a lot going on, and a lot of things have been renamed and stuff. So she's really created something new. So it could definitely be seen as an evolution, or an evolutionary move for the tarot. So I include that, and she's very well known. She's written the Holistic Tarot and a bunch of other books. She's prolific. um, cool. And here's a deck that was marketed as a it's not marketed as a tarot. It's called the Intuity deck, but it is a tarot deck. Um, and so here again, the world, the Wheel of Fortune as a perpetual motion machine, the tower, the sun, very phallic images of the sun with the maypole kind of thing going on. The Empress, the magician is the link between above and below, and then the High Priestess, which is, and these are very abstract. And this is marketed for like creatives in um, creatives to do storytelling art exercises. It's not meant for divination. It's part of this kind of It's a creativity tool, but it's a tarot deck. This one here is from the Temperance Tarot, again, fairly limited edition. These were done by Cindy Fan, um, and um, and I really like them. They're really rich colors, and there's lots of playfulness, and there's lots of um, recognizable people. Although I don't know who they are, I know that many of them um, who are real people, and there's some really interesting political statements in this deck as a whole. So this is, and the art is of course really really beautiful and rich and skillful. And yes, so this is, we'll come to the last two decks I have here. This is Jason Augustus Newcomb's um, PGM tarot. PGM stands for Papyri Greco Magica, which are these um, this record of the magical practices um, that were around in Alexandria and in the Hellenic period, where the Greeks were in Egypt and mixing Egyptian mythology with Greek philosophy and magic, and and so this is a really cool deck. It's got 100 cards in it, but these ones are the ones that correspond, if you want them to the planets. So the world is Aeon, Tyche is the wheel, Typhon, the tower, Helios, the god of the sun, Hera, the empress, Hecate, the magician. So magician is no longer Hermes, but Hecate. Hermes is the fool, which is cool, and then Artemis as the high priestess, which is well documented. So I really like this deck, and it's filled with interesting information on sorcery and magic, the Greco-Egyptian synthesis. And then finally, we see this same with the Blood and Ink Tarot by Elise Ursa, who is also a colleague and friend of mine. And so this is a deck that means quite a bit to me. It really it shows the intensity and the depth of Elise's knowledge and artistic. I, I can say this, so I think she's virtuosic. Is that right? Virtuosic as an artist, just what in the way she creates and the flow that comes up. I understand this came about in just a few days, and there were no takebacks, and there was no planning. There was so this really I want to say sanguine. I mean it. I mean it in the sense of the connection to the blood. Um, but this is a very bloody deck of cards, and it's deep and magical and witchy. But it is a Marseille tradition deck, so she's named them Le Monde, Le Roue de Fortune, and Le Maison Dieu, right, the House of God. So these are the names that you'll see in the Marseille cards. So this is a complete tour through the 7 majors, and we've seen a bunch of decks. We talked about the Ruach and the Magen Star, and that's ultimately the key. These 7 archetypes fit into this hexagrammic form, and this is the template for consciousness that enables us to occupy the present moment and minimize excesses and compensate for lacks, and to achieve a kind of equilibrium which ultimately emanates beauty, and that is the nature of this central position in the tree. So I hope this was valuable, and feel free to send me any of your thoughts or questions. So I'm Dr. Peter Deschemin, and this has been an adventure in the Planetary Major Arcana.